The sky above New Hansong burned red that morning. Dr. Hana Kim stood at the window of her medical clinic, watching the sunrise paint the clouds in shades of crimson and gold. She held her coffee cup with both hands, savoring the warmth. It was going to be a beautiful day. Then the stars began to fall. Hana blinked, confused. The bright points of light descending through the atmosphere were not stars at all. They were ships, hundreds of them, tearing through the sky like burning meteors. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Alert! Alert! All citizens report to emergency shelters immediately. The colony's warning system screamed to life. We are under attack. This is not a drill. The first explosion hit the eastern district. The building shook so violently that Hana fell to her knees. Glass rained down around her. She covered her head with her arms and tried to breathe. Her mind raced. Attack? Who would attack them? New Hansong was just a small colony. They had 50,000 people, mostly farmers and researchers. They had no military value. Hana! Young Sik Park burst through the clinic door, his face pale with fear. We need to evacuate. The defense force says something is coming down. She grabbed her emergency medical kit and ran with him into the street. Chaos surrounded them. People screamed and pushed in all directions. Parents carried crying children. The elderly stumbled and fell. Above them, massive ships descended through the smoke-filled sky. They were unlike anything Hana had ever seen. Dark metal hulls covered in strange markings. No lights, no signals. Just silent death falling from above. The ships opened fire. Beams of superheated plasma tore through buildings like paper. Entire blocks vanished in explosions of fire and debris. Hana ran faster, her lungs burning. Young Sik pulled her into an alley just as the street behind them erupted in flames. They made it to the central medical station, a reinforced building designed to withstand emergencies. Inside, it was already packed with wounded people. Blood covered the floors. The smell of burned flesh made Hana gag, but she forced herself to focus. She was a doctor. These people needed her. Captain Taemin Choi stood near the entrance, coordinating the defense force. His uniform was torn and covered in ash. Dr. Kim, thank God you're here. We have over 200 wounded already, and they keep coming. What's happening? Hana asked as she rushed to wash her hands. Who's attacking us? We don't know. Taemin's voice was tight with frustration. They didn't send any communication. No demands. No warning. They just started killing us. For 3 hours, Hana worked without stopping. She stitched wounds, stopped bleeding, and tried to save as many lives as she could. But there were so many. Too many. People died on the tables in front of her. Young children. Old grandmothers. People she knew from the market and the parks. Then the ground assault began. The creatures that emerged from the landing ships were nightmares made real. They stood over 2 meters tall, covered in thick scales that shimmered like dark oil. Their eyes glowed yellow in the smoke. They moved on 2 powerful legs, but their arms were long and tipped with claws that could tear through metal. Their mouths held rows of teeth designed for ripping meat. The defense force opened fire. Bullets bounced off the creatures' scales. Energy weapons burned their skin but didn't stop them. They were too strong, too fast. The defenders fell back, trying desperately to slow the advance. They're coming this way, someone shouted. Taemin grabbed Hana's arm. We need to move the patients to the underground levels. Now, but there wasn't time. The creatures smashed through the medical station's outer walls. Hana heard their terrible roars, a sound that made her bones vibrate with primal fear. These were predators, apex hunters from a world where only the strong survived. One of them appeared in the doorway of the surgical room. It was massive, its scales covered in human blood. It looked at Hana with those burning yellow eyes, and she knew she was going to die. Taemin stepped between them and fired his weapon directly at the creature's face. It roared in pain and stumbled backward. Run! He screamed at Hana. She ran, through corridors filled with smoke and blood, past rooms where people were dying, out into the burning streets of New Hansong. Explosions shook the ground. Buildings collapsed around her. The creatures were everywhere, killing anything that moved. But Hana also saw something strange. The creatures weren't just killing randomly. They seemed to be testing the humans. When a group of soldiers fought back fiercely, the creatures would pause, watching. When someone ran, they would chase and kill quickly. When someone fought, they would engage more carefully, almost respectfully. They're testing us, Hana whispered to herself. They want to see how we fight. She found shelter in a collapsed building and hid among the rubble. Outside, the battle continued. Human soldiers fought with desperate courage. They used traps, ambushes, and clever tactics. They refused to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. And slowly, Hana began to notice something. The creatures were taking more casualties than expected. The humans were small and weak compared to these monsters, but they were smart. They worked together. They protected each other. And they never ever gave up. As night fell on the first day of the invasion, New Hanseong was in ruins. Thousands were dead. The sky glowed orange from 100 fires. But the human defenders still held the central district. They had paid a terrible price, but they had not been exterminated. Hana huddled in her hiding place, exhausted and terrified. Her hands were covered in dried blood, though she couldn't remember whose. Her medical kit was empty. She had used everything trying to save people, and tomorrow the fighting would begin again. She closed her eyes and thought about her oath as a doctor. To do no harm. To preserve life. To help the sick and injured regardless of who they were. It seemed like a joke now. How could she preserve life when everything around her was death? But even in her despair, Hana made a promise to herself. As long as she lived, she would try to save people. Any people. Everyone she could. Because that was what made her human. Not her strength or her weapons, but her choice to care about others even when the world was ending. She didn't know it yet. But that promise would change everything. 3 days had passed since the invasion began. New Hanseong was dying slowly, block by block, building by building. Hana worked in what remained of the emergency field hospital, a basement under a partially collapsed school. The ceiling dripped water mixed with blood from the floors above. The lights flickered constantly. But it was shelter and it had medical supplies, so it became their sanctuary. Young Sik was dead. He had died on the second day, killed by falling debris while trying to rescue a trapped child. Hana had cried for 10 minutes, then went back to work. There was no time for grief. The wounded kept coming. "Dr. Kim, we have more incoming," a nurse called out. Her name was Yunji, and she couldn't have been more than 20 years old. Her hands shook as she prepared the surgical table. Captain Taemin Choi brought them in. 4 soldiers, all badly hurt. One was barely conscious, mumbling about his mother. Hana recognized him. Jiwon Lee, just 19 years old. He had only joined the defense force 6 months ago. "What happened?" Hana asked as she cut away Jiwon's bloody uniform. "Ambush in Sector 7, Taemin said quietly. "His whole squad was wiped out. He's the only survivor." Hana worked quickly, her trained hands finding the wounds and stopping the bleeding. Jiwon would live, but he would carry the scars forever, both the visible ones and the ones deep inside. "We're planning a counterattack," Taemin continued. "We can't just defend anymore. We need to hit them hard enough to make them reconsider." "Reconsider what?" Hana snapped, her exhaustion making her voice sharp. "They haven't even told us what they want. They just keep killing us." Taemin had no answer to that. The counterattack began at dawn. Hana heard the explosions from the hospital basement. The defense force had learned the creatures' patterns. They set traps in buildings, lured the aliens into kill zones, and used their knowledge of the colony's layout against the invaders. It was brutal work, but humans were good at being brutal when they needed to be. Jiwon Lee insisted on joining the fight despite his injuries. "My friends died," he said simply. "I need to make it mean something." Hana wanted to stop him, but she saw the look in his eyes. He was already gone, already walking with ghosts, so she just bandaged him up and watched him leave. Hours later, a massive explosion shook the hospital. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights went out completely. Hana grabbed a flashlight and ran toward the exit. "Don't go up there," Yunji shouted. "It's too dangerous." But Hana was already climbing the stairs. Something felt wrong. That explosion was close, too close, and it was different from the others. She emerged into a scene of total destruction. An entire apartment building had collapsed, its floors pancaked on top of each other. Fire burned in the rubble, and in the distance Hana could hear the creatures roaring. They were coming. She should have run back to the hospital. Every instinct told her to hide. But then she heard something else. A cry, high-pitched and broken. Not human. Hana moved toward the sound without thinking. She climbed over twisted metal and broken concrete, her medical training overriding her fear. Someone was hurt. Someone needed help. She found the source of the crying in a crater created by the explosion. At first, she couldn't understand what she was seeing. It was one of them, one of the creatures. But it was smaller, much smaller, about the size of a large human child. The creature was trapped under a fallen beam. Its scales were a lighter color than the adults with different markings. Its yellow eyes were wide with pain and terror, and it was crying. The sound was alien but unmistakable. This was a child. Hana froze. This thing was the enemy. Its kind had killed thousands of her people. Had killed Young Sick. Was killing humans right now just a few blocks away. She should leave it here. Let it die. That would be justice. But when she looked at the creature, all she saw was a terrified child, dying alone in the rubble of a war it didn't start. Damn it, Hana whispered. She dropped to her knees beside the creature. It hissed at her, trying to snap with its small teeth, but the movement made it cry out in pain. Hana could see the injuries now. Crushed legs, internal bleeding. If she didn't act fast, it would die within the hour. She opened her medical kit and took out a scanner. The creature watched her with those huge yellow eyes, confused and afraid. Hana spoke softly, knowing it couldn't understand her words but hoping it would understand her tone. It's okay. I'm going to help you. Just stay still. The scanner showed what she feared. Severe internal injuries. Broken bones. This would require surgery, and she couldn't do that here. She needed to move the creature, but the beam was too heavy. Explosions sounded nearby. The battle was getting closer. Hana worked frantically, using pieces of metal as levers to lift the beam just enough to pull the creature free. It screamed, a sound that tore at Hana's heart. But she got it out. The creature was heavier than it looked. Hana struggled to support its weight. She found a partially intact room in the collapsed building and dragged the creature inside. Her hands shook as she set up her portable medical equipment. I'm crazy, she said out loud. I'm completely crazy, but she didn't stop. She gave the creature something for pain, hoping the dosage was right. She used her tools to stabilize the worst injuries. She worked the same way she worked on human patients, with focus and care. The creature's crying gradually stopped. It watched Hana work, still afraid but no longer fighting. Maybe it understood somehow. Maybe it could sense that she was trying to help. Outside, the sounds of battle grew louder. Hana heard the heavy footfalls of adult creatures, their roars echoing through the ruins. They were searching for something, for someone. They were searching for this child. Hana looked down at the small alien in front of her, now stable but still critical. She thought about all the death she had seen, all the suffering, all the hatred between their species, and she realized something that changed everything. This child hadn't chosen this war, just like the human children dying in the streets hadn't chosen it. They were all just victims of something bigger than themselves. Your family is looking for you, Hana said softly to the creature. They're probably terrified, just like our families are terrified. The creature made a soft sound, almost like a whimper. Its small clawed hand reached out and grasped Hana's finger. The touch was gentle, seeking comfort. Hana sat there in the ruins, holding hands with an alien child while the world burned around them. And for the first time since the invasion began, she felt something other than fear and grief. She felt hope. Hana had been working on the alien child for almost an hour when she heard voices. Human voices. Her people were coming. Stay quiet, she whispered to the creature, though she knew it couldn't understand. The child's breathing was steadier now, but it was still in danger. She needed more time. Captain Taemin Choi appeared in the doorway with 5 armed soldiers. They were covered in ash and blood, their faces hard from days of constant fighting. When they saw Hana, relief flooded Taemin's features. Dr. Kim, thank God. We've been looking everywhere for you. We need to evacuate this area immediately. The creatures are... He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes had found the alien child lying on the floor beside Hana. What is that? It's hurt, Hana said simply, placing herself between the soldiers and the child. It needs medical care. The soldiers raised their weapons. One of them was Jiwon Lee, his face twisted with rage. That's one of them. That thing's family killed my entire squad. Stand aside, Dr. Kim, Taemin said, his voice cold. That's an enemy combatant. It's a child. Hana shouted. Look at it. It's barely more than a baby. I don't care if it's an infant, Jiwon said, stepping forward. They didn't care about our children. They bombed schools. They killed families. Why should we show them any mercy? Hana understood his anger. She felt it too. She thought about Young Sick. about all the patients she couldn't save, about the thousands of dead colonists. But when she looked at the small creature behind her, she couldn't see a monster. She only saw a frightened child. Because mercy is what makes us different from them, Hana said quietly. Because if we become killers of children, then we're no better than what we're fighting against. They started this war, another soldier yelled. And a child didn't make that decision, Hana shot back. Look at it. Really look. It's hurt and scared, and it doesn't understand what's happening any more than our children do. Taemin stared at her for a long moment. She could see the war in his eyes, the battle between duty and conscience. Finally, he lowered his weapon slightly. Dr. Kim, we don't have time for this. Every second we stay here, we're in danger. We need to leave now. I'm not leaving until I stabilize the patient, Hana said firmly. And yes, it is a patient. I took an oath to help the sick and injured. That oath doesn't have exceptions for species. Your oath might get us all killed, Ji-won screamed. The creature behind Hana made a small crying sound. It was getting worse. The injuries were too severe. Even with Hana's care, it might not survive much longer. Please, Hana said, looking at each soldier in turn. Please just give me 10 more minutes. That's all I need to make sure it won't die. Before anyone could answer, a roar echoed through the ruins. It was close, very close, and it was filled with rage and grief. The adult creatures had found them. They came through the walls like they were made of paper, 3 of them, each over 2 meters tall, their scales gleaming like dark armor. Their yellow eyes blazed with fury. And at the front was the largest one Hana had ever seen. Its scales were marked with scars from dozens of battles. The human soldiers opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts and bullets filled the air, but the creatures barely slowed down. They were too angry, too determined. This wasn't about war anymore. This was about family. Fall back, Taemin ordered, firing repeatedly at the lead creature, but there was nowhere to fall back to. They were trapped. The large creature stepped into the room and its eyes immediately found the child on the floor. It made a sound unlike anything Hana had heard before. Pain and relief mixed together. This was a parent finding their wounded child. The creature raised its weapon, a massive gun that looked like it could vaporize everyone in the room. It aimed at Taemin, ready to kill him for daring to be near its offspring. Hana moved without thinking. She stepped directly between the creature and the humans, her arms spread wide. The alien child was at her feet, connected to her medical equipment, barely alive. Stop, she shouted, knowing the creature probably couldn't understand her words. The large alien froze. Its weapon was pointed directly at Hana's chest. One squeeze of the trigger and she would be dead. The other 2 creatures flanked their leader, weapons also raised. The human soldiers aimed back. Everyone was seconds away from opening fire. Hana stood there, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She was going to die. She knew it. But if she moved, everyone would die. The child would die. And somehow that seemed like the worst outcome of all. She looked up at the massive creature and saw intelligence in those yellow eyes. Pain, fear, love. This wasn't a mindless monster. This was a person. A parent, please, Hana said softly. I'm helping, look. She pointed down at the medical equipment, at the child breathing more steadily now. I'm trying to save your child. The creature's eyes moved from Hana to the child and back again. Confusion crossed its features. Why would a human help a Vraxi? They were enemies. They were at war. This made no sense. Hana slowly knelt down beside the child, keeping her movements careful and non-threatening. She checked the monitors, adjusted the IV drip. The creature watched every movement, its weapon still raised but no longer pointed directly at her head. I lost someone too, Hana said, her voice breaking. A friend. A good person. He died trying to help others. And I've lost so many patients, so many people I couldn't save. Tears ran down her face. I'm tired of watching people die. I'm tired of all this death. Your child is just a child. It doesn't deserve to die for a war it didn't start. She finished adjusting the equipment and stood up. Behind her, she could hear Taemin trying to tell her to move to get to safety. But she ignored him. She kept her eyes locked on the large creature's eyes. I've done everything I can to stabilize it, but it needs better care than I can give here. It needs proper surgery. A real medical facility. Hana took a deep breath. So take it. Take your child. Get it the help it needs, please. The creature lowered its weapon slowly. The room held its breath, then the alien spoke. Its voice was deep and rough, but there were words in it. Words in broken human language. You help Why? Hana's mind reeled. They could speak? They understood? Because it's a child, she said simply. Because I'm a doctor. Because killing children is wrong no matter who they are. The creature stared at her for what felt like forever. Then it holstered its weapon. The other two creatures did the same. They moved to their fallen young one, lifting it carefully with a gentleness that seemed impossible from such massive beings. Before they left, the large creature turned back to Hana. It placed a clawed hand over its chest in what might have been a salute or a gesture of respect. Then it spoke one more word. Gratitude. And just like that, they were gone, carrying their wounded child into the smoke and ruins. The room was silent. Nobody moved. Nobody knew what to say. They had just witnessed something impossible. An enemy showing mercy. A moment of understanding in the middle of a war. Tamien finally broke the silence. What just happened? Hana collapsed to the floor, her legs unable to hold her up anymore. She was shaking all over, the adrenaline finally wearing off. I don't know, she whispered, but I think something just changed. Outside, the sounds of battle had stopped. For the first time in 4 days, New Hansong was silent except for the crackling of fires and the wind through the ruins. The war wasn't over. But somehow, impossibly, a door had been opened. A chance for something different. And it had all started with one woman's choice to show compassion when hate would have been easier. The Vraxi ships stopped firing that night, not because they surrendered, but because something impossible had happened. A human had saved one of their young. A human had shown mercy to an enemy child. This did not fit into any scenario the Vraxi had prepared for. Hana spent the night in the command center with Captain Taman and Minister Deho Shin, the colony's governor. Deho was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had aged 10 years in the past 4 days. They're requesting a meeting, Deho said, staring at the communication device on the table. The Vraxi commander wants to speak with you, Dr. Kim. You specifically. Why me? Hana asked, though she already knew the answer. Because you did something they didn't expect, Taman said. You showed them we're not what they thought we were. 3 hours later, Hana stood in a cleared area of the central district. Around her were ruins and the bodies of the dead, both human and Vraxi. The air smelled of smoke and death. She tried not to look at the faces of the fallen colonists. If she did, she might lose her courage. The Vraxi arrived in a small transport ship. 6 of them emerged, including the large one from before. It walked directly to Hana and stopped 3 meters away. Up close and without the chaos of battle, Hana could see more details. The scars on its scales, the intelligence in its eyes, the way it moved with careful control like a trained warrior. I am Warlord Kravish, it said in halting human language. Parent of Sunwoo, the small one you saved. I'm Dr. Hana Kim, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. How is your child? Sunwoo lives. Because of you. Kravesh's head tilted slightly. This does not make sense to Vraxi understanding. You are enemy. We kill your people. You kill our people. Why save enemy young? Hana thought carefully about her answer. Everything depended on this conversation. Because your child didn't attack us. Sunwoo is innocent. In my culture, we believe children should be protected. Even enemy children. Especially enemy children. Kravesh made a rumbling sound. The other Vraxi warriors shifted, clearly uncomfortable. Finally, Kravesh spoke again. You must understand. Vraxi do not think this way. In our world, weak die. Only strong survive. Even our young must prove strength or they are left to die. This is our way for thousands of years. Horror and understanding mixed in Hana's mind. You let your children die if they're weak? It makes species strong, Kravesh explained. Only best survive. Only strongest pass on genes. This is natural law of Vraxi. Then why did you come for Sunwoo? Hana challenged. If your way is to let the weak die, why did you risk your life to find your child? Kravesh was silent for a long moment. Because Sunwoo is not weak. Sunwoo was injured in battle. This is different. Warriors who fall in combat deserve honor, not abandonment. The warlord paused. But your question troubles me. You show mercy to truly weak, to those who cannot fight. Why? Because mercy makes us strong, Hana said. Because protecting the vulnerable means our society survives. When we help each other, when we care for the sick and the young and the old, we all become stronger together. Another Vraxi stepped forward. This one was even larger than Kravesh. Its scales darker and covered in more scars. I am Elder Voshk. I command Vraxi fleet. I listened to this conversation and I am confused. Your words say weakness is strength. This is contradiction. Minister Deho had joined them now, along with Taman and several other colony leaders. Deho spoke carefully. Maybe we need to understand why you attacked us in the first place. We never threatened you. We never even knew you existed until your ships appeared. Elder Voshk made a gesture that might have been a nod. We attacked because this is Vraxi way. We expand, we test other species. If they are strong, we make alliance. If they are weak, we conquer. This is how we meet all other species. You killed thousands of our people as a test? Taman's voice was filled with barely controlled rage. Yes, Voshk said simply. We believed you would understand this. We thought you attacked back because you knew the ritual. Many species do. But now Kravesh tells me something strange. You do not fight for dominance. You fight to protect weak. This is very different. Hana felt sick. All this death, all this suffering, because of a cultural misunderstanding. Because the Vraxi assumed everyone communicated through violence the same way they did. We fight to protect our families, she said. Our children, our elderly, are sick. We fight because we value every life, not just the strong ones. This is alien thinking to us, Voshk admitted, but it explains why you fight so fiercely. You do not fight just for yourself. You fight for those who cannot fight. This makes you more dangerous than we expected. Kravesh spoke again. When you saved Sunwoo, you did more than save one young Vraxi. You showed us that humans are not what we thought. You showed us that your weakness is actually a kind of strength we do not have. Over the next week, something remarkable happened. The fighting stopped completely. Not a ceasefire exactly, but a pause, a moment for both sides to try to understand each other. Hana became the bridge between species. She taught the Vraxi about human medicine, about how humans cared for their sick and injured. She showed them hospitals, schools, care facilities for the elderly. Things that didn't exist in Vraxi society. In return, the Vraxi explained their culture. They showed Hana their history, their evolution on a brutal high-gravity world where only the absolute strongest survived. They explained how their entire civilization was built on the concept of proving worth through combat and endurance. Our young die often, Kravesh explained one day. Sunwoo was with them now, recovering well. The young Vraxi stayed close to Hana, seeming to trust her. We think this is natural. But after seeing your medicine, your care, I wonder, could Sunwoo have died from injury we thought was natural weakness? Could we have saved young ones we let die? The question hung in the air like a revelation. Elder Voshk visited the human hospital and watched Hana work. The old warrior saw her save a human child who had been crushed under rubble. A child who would have died in Vraxi society. But with human medicine and care, the child lived. You make strength from weakness, Voshk said, wonder in their voice. You save those who would die and they become strong again. And you do this for everyone, not just warriors, even those who will never fight. Everyone has value, Hana said firmly. Strength isn't just about who can fight the best. It's about compassion, intelligence, creativity, kindness. A scientist is just as valuable as a soldier. A teacher is just as important as a warrior. This concept was revolutionary to the Vraxi. For days, their leaders debated among themselves. Some wanted to continue the war to follow the old ways. But others, especially those who had seen Hana work, who had seen how humans cared for each other, began to question everything they thought they knew. The turning point came when a Vraxi warrior was badly injured in an accident. Under normal circumstances, if the warrior could not heal on their own, they would be left to die with honor. But Kravesh made a different choice. They brought the warrior to Hana. She saved them. And in doing so, she saved more than one life. She saved the possibility of peace. You have given us a gift, Elder Voshk said to Hana. You showed us there are other kinds of strength, other ways to build a civilization. You made us question everything we believed. And you've taught us too, Hana replied. You've shown us that even in the darkest moments, understanding is possible, that enemies can become friends if they're willing to try. But the cost had been terrible. 12,000 humans dead, 8,000 Vraxi warriors fallen, all because two species couldn't understand each other before the shooting started. Hana thought about young sick, about all the patients she couldn't save, about the children who died in their parents' arms. The grief would never fully leave her, but maybe, just maybe, their deaths could mean something if it led to lasting peace. We propose formal talks, Voshk announced, real negotiations, to end this war and build something new. Alliance between Vraxi and humans. But only if you, Dr. Kim, will be part of talks. You are the only one both sides trust. Hana looked at the ruins of New Hanseong around her, at the people slowly beginning to rebuild, at Sunwoo, the small Vraxi who had somehow become the bridge between worlds. I'll do it, she said. For everyone we lost. For everyone we can save. 6 months had passed since the day Hana saved Sunwoo. 6 months since the impossible happened and enemies became something else. Not quite friends yet, but no longer trying to kill each other. It was a start. New Hanseong was rebuilding. The scars of war still marked the landscape. Buildings half repaired, memorial gardens where the worst fighting had occurred. But there was also something new, something unprecedented in the galaxy. Humans and Vraxi working together. Hana stood at the window of her new medical facility, watching a mixed group of human and Vraxi construction workers assembling a new school. They communicated through translators and hand gestures, sometimes arguing about methods but always finding ways to work together. It was messy and imperfect, but it was real. Dr. Kim, the delegates are arriving, Yoonji called from the doorway. The young nurse had stayed with Hana through everything, becoming her closest assistant. She was stronger now, no longer the frightened girl from that first terrible day. The treaty signing was today. 6 months of negotiations, arguments, cultural exchanges, and painful conversations about the thousands of dead on both sides. But they had reached an agreement. A real one. Not just a ceasefire, but a genuine alliance. Hana put on her formal jacket, the one Minister Daiho had given her. She still felt strange being called a diplomat. She was a doctor. But apparently, she was also the person who had started a peace process, so now she had multiple jobs. The ceremony took place in the central square, rebuilt specifically for this purpose. Thousands of humans attended and dozens of Vraxi. The aliens still made many colonists nervous and the feeling was mutual. But they were all here, all trying. Captain Taman stood guard, though he no longer expected violence. He had become one of the chief liaisons between human and Vraxi security forces. The two species were learning each other's combat techniques, sharing tactical knowledge. Former enemies training together. Are you nervous? He asked Hana quietly. Terrified, she admitted. What if this doesn't work? What if we're just delaying another war? Then we'll deal with it, Taman said firmly. But I don't think that'll happen. You've seen them, Hana, they've changed. We've changed. This is real. Elder Voshk arrived first, leading a delegation of Vraxi commanders and cultural leaders. The old warrior moved slowly now, with a limp from an injury that Hana had treated. An injury that would have meant death in the old Vraxi way, but now just meant Voshk needed a cane sometimes. Warlord Krivesh came next, and beside them was Sunwoo. The young Vraxi had grown in 6 months, was almost as large as an adult human now. But Sunwoo still stayed close to Hana, still trusted her above almost anyone else. Hello, Dr. Hana, Sunwoo said in clear human language. The young Vraxi had worked hard to learn, had become one of the best translators between the species. Hello, Sunwoo. How are you feeling? Nervous, Sunwoo admitted. Many Vraxi back home do not like this treaty. They say we are becoming weak like humans. They do not understand that humans are not weak. This was one of the ongoing challenges. Conservative Vraxi who believed the old ways were the only ways. Just as there were humans who couldn't forgive the Vraxi for the invasion, who saw any cooperation as betrayal of the dead. Minister Daiho began the ceremony. He spoke about the cost of war, about the 12,000 humans who died, about the grief that would never fully heal. His voice cracked when he mentioned his own daughter, killed in the first bombardment. Then Elder Voshk spoke. The translator converted their words into human language, but the emotion was clear even without translation. We came to your world expecting to find prey or partners in the way we understood partnerships. We found neither. We found something we had no words for. We found a species that is strong because they protect the weak. That is fierce because they love deeply. That survives because they refuse to leave anyone behind. Voshk paused, their large frame shifting with what might have been emotion. We killed 8,000 of our warriors learning this lesson. You killed 12,000 of your people teaching it. This is a terrible price for wisdom. We cannot bring back the dead. We can only promise to make their deaths mean something. Krivesh stepped forward next. My child Sunwoo lived because one human chose mercy over hate. Dr. Hana Kim could have let Sunwoo die. Should have, by all logic of war. But she didn't. And that choice changed everything. The warlord looked directly at Hana. You showed us that strength without compassion is just violence. We have been violent for a very long time. We want to try something different. Now it was Hana's turn to speak. She hadn't prepared a speech. She had tried, had written and rewritten words 100 times, but nothing felt right. So she just spoke from her heart. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a politician. I'm just a doctor who made a choice to save a life.
Any life, because that's what I was trained to do.
That's what I believe in. She looked at the crowd, at all the faces, human and Vraxi. We've all lost people we love. We all carry scars from this war, and nothing I say can make that better. But I believe we have a choice now. We can let grief turn into more hate, more violence, more death, or we can choose to build something new. She gestured to where human and Vraxi workers were constructing the school together. Look at them. 6 months ago, they were trying to kill each other. Today, they're building a place for children to learn. Our children and Vraxi children studying together, learning about each other. That's the future I want. That's what all those people died for, even if they didn't know it at the time. The treaty was signed by Minister Deho for the humans and Elder Voshk for the Vraxi. The document was simple but revolutionary: an alliance between species, mutual defense, cultural exchange, and most importantly, a commitment to teach each other. Humans would share their medical knowledge, their concepts of compassion and social support. Vraxi would share their warrior traditions, their technology, their strength. But the real revolution was smaller, more personal. It was in the human children who no longer screamed when they saw a Vraxi. It was in the Vraxi warriors who had started questioning which of their traditions made them strong and which just made them cruel. It was in Sunwoo, a young Vraxi who would return home as an ambassador, carrying with them the radical idea that protecting the weak was not weakness. After the ceremony, Hana found a quiet moment in the memorial garden. This was where young Sik was honored along with thousands of others. She placed flowers at his memorial stone. I hope you'd be proud of what we've built, she whispered. I hope all of you would be. She felt a presence behind her. Sunwoo had followed her. The young Vraxi looked at the memorial stones, at the names carved into them. Do humans believe the dead can hear us? Sunwoo asked. Some do. I'm not sure what I believe anymore. In Vraxi tradition, dead warriors join the eternal hunt. They watch over the living, judging if we are strong. Sunwoo paused. But I think maybe we were wrong about what strength means. Maybe these dead humans are not judging combat skill. Maybe they judge if we are kind. If we protect others. If we try to be better. Hana smiled sadly. That sounds like a good way to honor them. Months turned into years. The alliance held. There were problems, of course. Cultural clashes, misunderstandings, incidents that nearly sparked new violence. But each time, people like Hana and Kravesh and Sunwoo found ways to build bridges instead of walls. Human medical techniques spread through Vraxi space. Young Vraxi who would have died from weakness were saved. Vraxi society began to change, slowly, painfully, but surely. They learned that compassion didn't make them weak. It made them more than just survivors. It made them civilized. The Vraxi taught humans too. Their warrior discipline, their mental training techniques, their ability to endure hardship. Humans learned that strength and compassion weren't opposites. They were partners. New Hanseong became a symbol. The place where the impossible happened. Where enemies became friends. Where a doctor's choice to save one child ended a war and started something new. One day, 5 years after the invasion, Hana visited the new school that had been built. She watched human and Vraxi children playing together in the yard. They had invented a game that combined human and Vraxi rules, something neither species had played before but both enjoyed. A small human girl named Bulman was playing with Sunwoo, who had returned to New Hanseong as a permanent ambassador. They were laughing about something, the sound of joy transcending species. You did this, Taemin said, standing beside Hana. He had stayed on New Hanseong, had married Eunji, and was now head of the Joint Security Force. You saved all of this by saving one small alien child. We all did this, Hana corrected. Everyone who chose peace over revenge. Everyone who chose to try to understand instead of just hate. That's what made this work. But she knew what he meant. That moment in the ruins when she chose to save Sunwoo instead of leaving the child to die, that was the moment everything changed. One choice. One act of mercy, and it rippled out to change everything. That night Hana stood again at her window looking at the lights of New Hanseong. Human lights and Vraxi lights, different colors and styles, but all shining together. creating something beautiful from the darkness. She thought about all those who died. Young Sikh, the 12,000 humans, the 8,000 Vraxi warriors. They couldn't see this peace, couldn't know what their sacrifice had built. But Hana carried them with her. Every life she saved, human or Vraxi, was a way to honor them. In the end, that's what made humans special. Not their strength, not their technology, not their weapons. It was their ability to see an enemy child dying in the rubble and choose to save it anyway. To choose compassion even when hate would be easier. To choose hope even when despair seemed more logical. That was humanity's real power. The ability to look at impossible situations and make them possible through simple acts of kindness. One life saved. One hand extended. One moment of mercy in the middle of war. And from those small moments, peace grew. Imperfect and fragile, but real. And that was worth everything.